What if I told you that one of the most pivotal battles in Islamic history was won not by sheer numbers or weapons, but by faith, strategy, and a cause that shook the Arabian Peninsula? But before we begin, like this video and subscribe to the channel. This is the untold story of the Battle of Badr, a confrontation that changed the course of history. It was the moment when a small, outnumbered group of believers stood against a powerful force that sought to crush them. What happened on that desert battlefield was more than just a clash of swords. It was the beginning of a movement that would reshape empires. Stay with us as we dive deep into the events, people, and divine interventions that led to this historic victory. To truly understand the Battle of Badr, we must first step into the world of 7th century Arabia, a land dominated by tribalism, pagan beliefs, and fierce loyalties. The Arabian Peninsula was not a unified nation but a mosaic of clans and tribes, often at war with one another, yet all bound by complex codes of honor and revenge. Mecca, a city nestled within a rugged valley, had grown into a major commercial and spiritual center. It housed the Kaaba, a sacred sanctuary that attracted pilgrims from across Arabia, bringing with them wealth and influence to the ruling Quraysh tribe. The Quraysh were not just stewards of the Kaaba, they were the elite class of Meccan society, fiercely protective of their power and deeply entrenched in the traditions of idol worship. Into this setting came a man named Muhammad ibn Abdullah, known for his honesty and wisdom even before his prophetic mission. When he began preaching the oneness of God, urging people to abandon their idols and live righteously, he posed a direct challenge to the Quraysh's authority, their religious beliefs, and their economic interests. Islam's early followers were a small, persecuted minority. They were beaten, tortured, boycotted, and even killed. The Prophet himself was mocked, slandered, and physically attacked. But despite these hardships, the message of Islam began to spread, quietly taking root in the hearts of those disillusioned by the corruption and cruelty of their society. After more than a decade of persecution, the Prophet received an invitation to relocate to Yathrib plateau known as Medina, where rival tribes had embraced Islam and was seeking a just leader to mediate between them. This migration, or hijrah, marked not only a new chapter for the Muslim community, but also the beginning of an Islamic polity. In Medina, the Muslims found a safe haven, but their struggle was far from over. The Quraysh viewed the Prophet's growing influence as a threat that could no longer be ignored. They began plotting to assassinate him, and though their plan failed, they would not rest. Trade routes that passed through Medina became strategic targets, and raids on caravans became acts of economic warfare. One such caravan, returning from Syria under the command of Abu Sufyan, was especially significant. It was laden with goods and represented the wealth of the Meccan elite, many of whom had seized the property of Muslims who had fled Mecca. The Muslims, numbering just over 300, set out to intercept the caravan. They were poorly equipped, having only 2 horses and about 70 camels among them. Most carried simple weapon swords, spears, and slings, but what they lacked in arms, they made up for in unity and conviction. They did not know they would soon face a far larger force. Learning of the Muslims' plans, Abu Sufyan diverted the caravan along a coastal route and sent a message to Mecca, urging the Quraysh to come to its defense. The Quraysh responded swiftly, assembling an army of 1,000 men, including many of their most prominent leaders, Abu Jahl, Utbah ibn Rabi Shayba, and others, along with 100 horses and hundreds of camels. When the Prophet received news that the Quraysh army was approaching, he consulted his companions. Should they continue with the raid, or stand and fight a vastly superior force? The decision was not taken lightly. The Muhajiran, those who had emigrated with the Prophet from Mecca, stood firm. But what about the Ansar, the natives of Medina, who had pledged to protect the Prophet but only within the bounds of their city? Their leader, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, rose and declared that they would not abandon the Prophet. They would fight by his side, even if it meant death. Reassured and emboldened, the Prophet led his companions toward the valley of Badr, strategically placing them near a well to control the area's precious water supply. There, he devised a battle plan, organized the ranks, and appointed commanders. He spent the night in prayer, asking for divine help. The atmosphere was tense. They were a small band, facing a mighty army, and the odds were not in their favor. But they believed, with unshakable certainty, that they were fighting not for land or spoils, but for truth. The Quraysh, confident in their numbers, advanced toward Badr. Their warriors wore armor, carried banners, and boasted of an easy victory. They underestimated the resolve of the Muslims. On the morning of the 17th of Ramadan, the battle began with traditional Arab single combat. From the Quraysh side emerged 3 champions, Utbah, Shayba, and Walid. The Prophet sent forward Ali and Ubaidah. Hamza and Ali swiftly killed their opponents, while Ubaidah was wounded before finally dispatching his enemy. These early victories electrified the Muslims and shocked the Quraysh. With a cry of advance, for paradise lies beneath the shade of swords, the Muslim army charged. Chaos erupted as the 2 forces collided. The Muslims fought with discipline and courage. Though outnumbered, they held their lines, pushing back wave after wave. The Quraysh, on the other hand, became increasingly disoriented. They had not expected such fierce resistance. At the heart of the battle was the Prophet, directing troops, encouraging his companions, and praying. Legends speak of angelic figures descending to aid the Muslims, their presence felt in the thunder of hooves and the flash of blades. The Quran itself references this, promising divine support to those who stand for truth. As the battle raged, key leaders of Quraysh began to fall. Abu Jahl, the self-proclaimed enemy of Islam, was struck down by two young warriors, Mud and Mu. When his body was found, the Prophet is reported to have said, "This is the Pharaoh of this nation." His death was more than symbolic. It was a crushing blow to Qurayshi morale. The battlefield became a place of reckoning. The Quraysh began to retreat, panic spreading through their ranks. Some fled into the desert, while others were captured. 70 were killed, including several major figures. 70 more were taken prisoner. The Muslims, despite their small numbers, had achieved a stunning victory. 14 had fallen as martyrs. Each of them became a symbol of sacrifice and honor. But the story of Badr did not end on the battlefield. The aftermath was equally significant. The Prophet treated the prisoners with dignity, offering many the chance to ransom themselves through knowledge. Those who could read and write were asked to teach Muslim children in exchange for their freedom. This act demonstrated that the battle was not one of vengeance, but of principle. News of the victory at Badr spread rapidly across Arabia. Tribes that had been undecided about Islam began to reconsider. The Muslims, once seen as a persecuted sect, had now proven themselves a formidable force. The Quraysh, humiliated and enraged, began to plan revenge. The battle lines between Mecca and Medina had been drawn, and though Badr was a victory, it also marked the beginning of a protracted conflict that would continue for years. The spiritual impact of Badr was profound. For the Muslims, it was a validation of their faith. The Quran frequently references the battle, reminding believers that victory comes not from numbers, but from reliance on God, discipline, and justice. It became a story told and retold across generations, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and divine favor. It also forged a new kind of society, one that valued not just tribal connections, but shared belief and commitment to a higher cause. This sense of brotherhood would become the foundation of a global civilization. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe.